Hey guys, have you ever thought about growing sweet potatoes in the UK? No? Maybe you thought you needed a warmer climate. Maybe you thought you needed a greenhouse or a big plot of land. Well, actually, you can grow them on a really small plot of land. I'm going to show you how to do that in this video. Sweet potatoes are amazingly good for you, really sweet and tasty in flavour, full of vitamin A, vitamin C, and other minerals and vitamins, and really not that difficult to grow. So, how are you going to get started in growing sweet potatoes? Well, you could go to the supermarket, buy a bag of sweet potatoes, cut a bit off, and start propagating. But of course, these varieties come from abroad, from warmer climates, and they're just not going to be hardy enough for the UK. So, you are going to need to start at least with some proper plants bought from a nursery. Varieties that are suited to our climate include T65, Beauregard Improved, Murasaki, Georgia Jet, Carolina Ruby, and Bonita, and probably some other ones. I've only tried the first three, but I've had a lot of luck with them. Now, they are quite pricey for what they are. They're just what they call a slip, which is a little propagated cutting, about £5 or £6 a plant. But once you've got that plant and you've grown a bunch of sweet potatoes, one single decent-sized potato is going to give you probably about 40 slips or cuttings the following year. So it is an investment for life. And make sure you guard it. Now, when the slips arrive, they're going to probably look a bit withered because they've come through the post. But all you've got to do is pop them in a glass of water overnight to recover. And then they should look like this. If you're planting for the first time, let them grow on a little bit, pot them up a little bit, and make sure they're out of frost for at least 3 weeks. And you don't really want to be putting them out until sort of the end of May when the last frosts are here. But now you're going to join me at a stage where I've got my sweet potatoes from the previous year, and I'm going to be making my own slips. It's now February the 17th in Britain. Temperature has probably gone up to about 10 degrees now, but in any case, I'll probably start to prep up these sweet potatoes and try and get them sprouting around this time of year so that they're ready and going in the swing of things by springtime. I've just pulled them out from underneath the staircase and taken off all the roots and stuff, and now we're going to just clean them up with a sort of sponge, soft scouring pad. Don't really want to use anything harsher than that. I don't want to damage the potatoes, but I do need to get that mud off, because what we're going to do is poke some cocktail sticks through little pieces of them and set them up into glasses of water. And I don't really want the mud, is just going to encourage fungal growth, so we want to keep them clean. So that's what we're going to do next, and then I'll come back to you. So what we're going to do is cut off any old rotten bits. Just get a nice clean bit of sweet potato. I'm going to cut a chunk off about 1 inch long. In this case, maybe a bit longer, because I'm not going to be able to use any of I probably could get 2 out of that. Let's go for 2 and get rid of that rotten bit there. So we don't want that, or any of that. The trick is to get it to balance. So you got 2 cocktail sticks, that's what you want. You poke that through, not too close to the end, because otherwise it will split the sweet potato. And I'm trying to do this without jabbing myself in the hand. Alright, go on, Bennett. Then you snap the other one in half. Poke that through that side. The reason you have to put the second one in is because otherwise, once the water goes in, the sweet potato will tip over, and you want it to sit upright in the water. Whoop. It's just, you want to get a container that's just wide enough. So there you go, that's exactly what you want. And you'll have to change that water every, I don't know, week or two, because you'll get algae growth in it.
put that somewhere warm. I put it upstairs in the top front bedroom, south facing, and within a week or two you'll start to see little growths out of all the little, there's lots of little buds that will grow out the side of it. You might get several shoots out of that, and we will take it from there. Right, so 3 weeks on from those photos, you can now see that there's been some roots and leaves sprouted. It's probably the best example. So it's got some roots growing out the bottom there and some leaves. If you can quite see that, yeah, some leaves growing out of there. They're growing all over the place. So I will get lots of plants out of this.
So another 3 weeks on, so we're coming towards the end of March now, and obviously you've got considerable growth now. These are definitely ready to portion up, so you're going to get like a little Stanley blade or something like that and cut out, as I say, the shoot and a bit of root, ideally, with a chunk of sweet potato. And then we're going to pot those up into individual pots, grow them on a little bit more, and then we'll be able to put them out into the various locations. So once you've potted them up, it's entirely up to you how long you leave them before you actually plant them out. Obviously, you don't want to constrain them within the pot, but also you want to grow them till they're tough enough that slugs basically will not eat them. They just love anything tender, and they will make short work of a small sweet potato cutting. You don't actually want to plant out any earlier than mid to late May, when the soil temperature has reached at least 12 Celsius, because that will give them the best chance of growing anyway. I grow my sweet potatoes in car tyres, which is kind of fun. And you can get car tyres easily for nothing from tyre fitting places, you know, especially old tyres. They just want to get rid of them, so you're doing them a favour, in fact. So you're going to get your 2 car tyres. You only really need 2 because the tubers don't grow down that far, but it's entirely up to you. Maybe it'll help you back if you've got them stacked up higher. It makes no difference. Fill them up with compost and soil, maybe a bit of sand, sharp sand as well, just to make sure you've got nice free draining soil. Because bear in mind that these plants are not native to our country. They do come from abroad. You want it in somewhere south facing. And there is actually a practical element to this, of course, because black rubber is one of the best absorbers of heat from sunshine. So they're going to give that extra warmth to a sweet potato plant. Certainly when I've tried growing them in the ground, it's been an absolute failure, because I think it just gets too cold. But surprisingly, they do actually grow them in places like Essex. I think there's some big farms out there that do grow sweet potatoes, although you will only find foreign sweet potatoes in the supermarket, and big ones too. So they must be using some sort of cloches or something over in Essex, some way to heat up the ground. Anyway, that's what I do. I plant them in these. Let's say fill it up with soil, plant the plant. Make sure you put some mulch down, so that could be wood chip, or I use Strolch, which is composted straw. And then within about 12 to 16 weeks, so you're hitting around September time, they'll be ready to harvest. But of course, you may not be ready to store them at home, because you're going to want to store some for next year. You're going to want to store some ready to eat. So you can actually leave them in the ground until you start getting some really heavy frost. So I tend to harvest them. There's a general rule, isn't there, even with potatoes, that you will harvest them once the green foliage starts to die off and turn brown and yellow. So that's a good time. That usually be about October, before we start hitting any frosts. And then that's the time to pull them. So that's what we're going to do next. We're going to harvest them from October. So just cut the foliage off. And we hit the jackpot. That is probably the biggest sweet potato I've ever grown. I know you probably think I just planted it in there. No, honestly, I'm going to weigh that when I get home. That is definitely breaks the record for me. Well, look. Then we've got this one, half decent. There's obviously another big one in there. I'm going to try and rat that out. And all these pieces, you're going to keep them, because although they might not be much good for cooking, these are going to make excellent cuttings for the sprouting next year. So I'm going to have another route around and see what else I can find in here. Okay, so all I've been doing is just gently
brushing off the big chunks of mud with my hand, and we're going to leave them out to dry, put them in a sort of sunny spot, and then when they're fully dry we're going to brush the dry mud off, and then we're going to store them.
Okay, it's going to be a little bit tricky because it's always a little bit tricky because you can't, even if you use a fork, you sometimes end up damaging the sweet potatoes. Let's first of all get rid of this stuff. Notice my, just want a quick look at my creeping raspberry. Doing well as usual. Likes the shady part of the garden. I had it in a sunny part before, just did not like it at all, for obvious reasons. Okay, there we go. So they won't store very well if you damage them. Bit of quiche. Brilliant. Don't know how a bit of quiche ended up in there or how it's managed to stay alive, but I mean, it's very difficult to not damage them, but do our best. So yeah, not a massive harvest, but not too bad, probably kilos worth. First thing we're going to do is to let the mud dry off. So just put them into a container where they're all spread out and just let the mud dry, and then we'll be able to brush it off. Literally all we're doing now is just brushing off any more of the big chunks of dried mud. We don't want to use a brush because I'm trying not to damage the skins. Most of the big ones won't need to keep that long, but the smaller pieces, you know, like that, for example, I'm going to definitely be using those to make my cuttings next year, sprout for the coming season. So they've got to last through till March. So that's a good 5 months.
So that's pretty good like that. That's going to keep well in storage.
Just wanted to weigh this big sweet potato and check it out, 658 grams. Booyah! I don't think I'm going to beat that anytime soon. That is some record for me. Well, who says size doesn't matter? Size really does matter. The bigger the better, baby. I reckon I got about 3 kilos overall from 2 plants, so 1.5 kilos a plant. That's not bad. I'm going to need a lot more tyres, aren't I? So before we put them into cold storage, we're going to need to cure them. Now, you've probably heard me talk about this with other food stuff. So for example, sweet chestnuts, you leave them out for a few days. In the case of sweet potatoes, it's going to be 7 to 14 days. And that is to toughen up the skins so that they will keep longer for those 6 months, 5 or 6 months once you put them into cold storage. Ideal conditions, 24 to 29 Celsius, which is 75 to 85 Fahrenheit, with a humidity of 90 to 95%. We're not going to get up to 29 Celsius, maybe not even 24 in the UK, not unless you've got the central heating on full blast, and in that case you're reducing the humidity. So we're going to lean towards the longer end of that storage, so 14 days. And in terms of location, I mean, I keep them upstairs in this top front bedroom, and it's definitely nowhere near 23 Celsius, and they've done fine. Every year I've managed to get sweet potato cuttings. You know, they're still viable come sort of February, March. I suppose if you want a humid place, you might think about a bathroom or a kitchen, but then the kitchen doesn't have any heating most of the time when you're not cooking. So in warm climate, you could keep them in a greenhouse. I suppose the airing cupboard might be another option. It's only going to be for a couple of weeks, so those would be my suggestions. All right, folks, these are going to be going into cold storage now. So I'm going to rob a few of the potatoes to eat, and the rest are going to go away for 5 to 6 months. So let's make sure that you put them in a good location. Do not put them in a refrigerator because that will cause them to dry up and shrivel. You're looking for somewhere nice and cool, 10 to 16 Celsius ideally, 50 to 60 Fahrenheit. You know, in a typical British household, ideal locations would be exterior brick built structure, you know, for example, a garage or maybe a shed even. And it's going to, you know, have a pretty constant temperature, but keep them nice and sort of dark and cool. Inside a house, well, we're lucky enough to have an end of terrace, so we've got an exterior wall with a lot of cupboards on it. So, for example, kitchen cupboards here are all on the exterior wall, so that definitely, I've measured the temperature in here before. It's pretty cold during the winter, but because they're quite small, I suppose there's not a lot of airflow in there. I think the best location I've found is actually under the stairs. So the understairs cupboard, and I've had luck with this every single year. It's always worked out for me, so I'm going to be putting them in there. I will show you my setup in the garage, but that's what I would recommend. I suppose if you're in a flat or you're not on an end of terrace, then you want to be putting them on exterior uninsulated walls at the front and back of the building, or come up with some idea yourself. All right, let's go take a look at that shed and then we'll put them away. Okay, so we're inside the garage now, and this is where I would typically keep these. See, I drilled a load of holes into this chest of drawers, and inside we've got a little rack here, so you've got the airflow going underneath it. So that's one option. So here they are in their final resting place, and I will obviously pull out the larger ones to eat as and when I need to, and the other ones I'll leave now until February when we start the whole process all over again. Anyway, I hope this was helpful for you and encourages you to grow your own sweet potatoes. They are one of the easier plants to grow, in fact, if you give them a little bit of help. And they're obviously absolutely delicious, really good for you, so I'd strongly encourage you to do that. It gives you a real motivation when you see plants growing really well. Anyway, I'll be making more videos like this on permaculture, sustainability, fixing things, EVs and so on. So If you've liked this video, please hit the like button, subscribe to my channel, and we will see you on the next video. Cheers, bye.